Hello to another Draw With Me video. If you have already seen some of my Draw With Me videos, you know that these are in real time. They show me drawing a certain part of an image and just talk about random stuff. So you get a feel of how I work and how slow some process is. And in this one, I'm just going to add the finished picture on the end of the video. Usually I haven't done that yet, but I think it's more interesting if you don't see the whole process, that you at least see the finished one. Now, as you can see here, I have already started this new piece of artwork. I'm currently drawing a lot of bone stuff again, and last time I did a femur. So this time I drew a vertebrae of the human spine. It's somewhere around the chest part, so you can see here I've already done the drawing in pencil with a little bit of texture, and I made one big colored wash over the whole drawing to get a starting atmosphere of the picture. And I'm simply going to color in the actual drawing over this first layer of watercolor. It's already completely dry because I like to work wet on dry, so I make my layers and then I make new layers and so on and so forth. So maybe I'm going to show you one or two layers that I'm making here. Depends, because you always have to wait until one layer is dry before you put the next one on there. So we will see how far I will work in this video. Just to show you how I created this vertebrae, I used a book, Die Gestalt des Menschen, so the figure of human form, or no, the figure of humans, or the form of humans, or the form of man, whatever. You look it up. It's by Gottfried Bammes, and I have the one with people. I usually take the cover off. And I also have the one for animals. So this is a really detailed book with a lot of anatomy for artists. And I used this page in particular to build up my drawing. Just let me show you with the drawing besides it. So you can see I used this one as reference and the one down here. These are the chest vertebrae. So yeah, it is more or less accurate to get all these tiny bits and bobs on more or less the right place. And this is how I constructed my specific vertebrae. And I just added this gooey stuff because I like to draw bones with weird fantasy gooey stuff. So they are anatomically in the right direction, but it's not 100% correct, but that's not really my goal with this. It's just that you recognize the bone, and then I just go and play and have fun with it. I can really highly recommend this Gottfried Bammes book. So I already have prepared my colors here. These are usually the colors I work with when I'm drawing my bone pictures. So I have some light skin color, bony color stuff. I have an ochre, a reddish darker brown, a really dark brown. I have a weird dirty blue for shades, or like shading the darker parts. And in this I have currently a dirty red, which I'm going to use for the gooey stuff. I'm going to use these real haired brush. I have these brushes since I was at art school. I have them since years. If you treat them well, they will never fail you. For watercolor, I really like to use brushes which have real hair or real fur, animal fur, just because they hold the water better. This is a size 5. I have them from 1 to 8, and usually I work with 6 or 5 for the bigger parts. I use the 8 if I cover a large part like this. This is wet on wet, so I get these soft gradients. And when I finished the rough parts with the 5 or 6 size, I usually go down to 2 or 1. So usually I use this one. This is now a 3 for the details. So let's start this. I'm going to take you a little bit closer. So now I think you can see what I'm actually doing. One of the reasons why I don't film my whole process when I'm drawing pictures like this, or in general when I make art, I rarely, or when I make artworks like this one, I rarely like to film, because filming my artwork while I'm working on it is filming my artwork while working on it is always a little bit stressful. You just saw me switch there in German because talking and drawing is also quite difficult. So that's mainly the reason why I only show you some parts of my process. I could, of course, simply make time-lapse videos, but sometimes I want to show you how slow art making really is. So if you only watch time-lapse videos, you always get the feeling that, you know, really good artists pump out these artworks like really quickly, but in fact they worked on a piece for 8 hours plus or 20 hours and they just compressed it down to one video, and then you might be a little bit frustrated when you're a younger artist or beginner artist, why you cannot work that quick or why you take so long to do something. Stuff like art takes time. So that's my main reason of making these draw with me videos. And another one is simply to chat with you. Because for this one, I actually wanted to ask you, my dear viewers, a question. And that is something I am thinking about, well, not a lot, but sometimes myself. Watercolor. Is watercolor considered drawing, or is it already painting? Because I define myself as more of a draftsman. I prefer drawing over painting. I'm a much better drawer than I am a painter. I'm really bad at painting. I should need lots more practice with it. But I've always, I don't know, I like watercolor, and for me, I have always considered watercolor to be something like drawing with a brush. I know it's a little bit weird calling it drawing with a brush, because you usually paint with a brush. But with watercolors and me working on dry on dry on this, wet on dry, so I always wait a little bit until one layer is dry before I make the next one. So having a lot of control, watercolor feels to me more like a drawing process, or closer to drawing than painting actually. But then again, I think the definition for painting is everything you do with a brush, like when you use a pencil or a pen or anything with a hard tip is drawing, and everything with a soft tip or like a brush is painting. So I would like to ask you if you consider watercolor painting or more drawing. Because there's also this thing, when you have this definition with a hard brush or a hard tip and a soft tip, like pencils and brushes, there you can clearly make a difference. But if you, for example, have a felt tip pen, which is actually a brush pen. So it's an ink pen with a brush tip. So for example, when you have something like this, these Pentel brush pens, when I use this one, is it already painting or is it still drawing? Because I use this in an ink medium on my drawings to make lines and blotch in bigger shapes, I consider brush pens also drawing tools. But with the definition of hard tips and soft tips, a brush pen would clearly be a soft tip. So you can see me just dipping also in different colors here. I'm trying to mix a little bit in the ochre with this soft, more beige skin color tone, because bones are never clearly white or clearly, well, they're never clearly white and they are never clearly ochre. They have many different shades in them, and that's what I'm trying to do by using ochre and beige colors together. And you can also slowly work towards shadows like that. So if you would have your beige colors and then suddenly have a dark brown or a bluish part to make a shade, I think it would be a very rough edge. So by using different colors and multiple values of them, you can actually soften up the progress of shading and give the bone actually more texture. Because if you just had a pale white bone, it would be absolutely not interesting. I think actually if you don't clean the bones by scraping off anything that's glued to them and cooking them and bleaching them, they aren't actually white. I might make them a little bit too brownish, too ochreish, but that is my artistic freedom, because I want them to look a certain way, have a certain style about them, certain look. So there's where I take my freedom as an artist. I'm not really sure if I already said this, coming back to the question if it's painting or drawing. What I also will feel while I'm, let's say, draw with watercolor, I get the feeling that I have a lot of control over my medium. I can make hard edges if I want to, but I can also make soft use of the color. And I think this level of control is also something that gives me the feeling that this is much more like drawing rather than painting. And then again, there's the question if do I have more control or the feeling of control in watercolor simply because I do it quite a lot, because I haven't done as much gouache or oil painting as I have done watercolors. So this feeling of control or being more easily controllable could just be, well, me imagining I have more control just because out of practice. So yeah, what do you guys think? Just leave in the comments below. Tell me what you think about this definition of drawing and painting. I would be very interested in how some other people see this. I'm currently concentrating more on the bone first before I go to the gooey stuff, because if I go to the gooey stuff, I have to make sure that all the parts that touch the next, like I have the form of the gooey stuff, I have the form of the bone, and one line in between. And if I were to do both parts at the same time, like already start with the red here, I would it would spill over and the colors would mix, and that's something I want to avoid. I really want my clean edges here. I mean, sometimes you want that, and then go for it and do it and let colors mix and mingle. But for me, in this case, I do not want it. One of the reasons why I make a soft wash over my drawing before I even start drawing with the watercolor, or painting if you prefer, is to have establish an all over atmosphere on my picture before I even start with building up the layers of the actual drawing. Plus, if I were to draw my background, which this wash is, I have no background in this picture, my background is just this colorful feeling I added there, then I would have a really harsh edge from the background to the bone. So like this, my background is really everywhere, even behind the drawing, and I can simply layer up and work out what I want to have. That's also a reason why the wash is very soft, because I don't want it to affect my colors that I'm laying atop too much, because watercolor is always transparent. But I want it to affect it a little bit so that it's more all one piece. Oh, I forgot that down here there's also a little bony part. Let's go back with the beige color there first. You would think that a vertebrae is simply a round cylinder thing where you have your nerve system inside, but there are actually a lot of bits and bobs clinging onto the vertebrae, which are really important for the whole construction of the skeleton. For example, on these two tiny things, these would connect to this part of the next vertebrae that's over this one, as well as this one would connect to these parts of the next vertebrae that's under this one, so to form the spine. And in between you would have these puffy discs. And actually, what I always thought when I was younger, I always thought that the spinal cord is inside of this vertebrae. But let me get back my books. So here, it's easier to explain with the top-down view. I hope I'm not touching my image too much. You can see this is the top-down view of what I'm drawing. So this is your vertebrae, and the vertebrate body. And the spinal cord actually goes into this hole here. So you have the body of your vertebrae, and then you have this ring around it, like behind it, attached to it. And inside of this ring is all this nerve stuff. So if you, for example, hear that some of the vertebrae is broken, I always thought that when it's broken here inside, there's the damage on the spinal cord, but it's actually in here. If I understood this wrong, please correct me. So yeah, actually while drawing the bones, you can learn some cool anatomy stuff when you have subjects like this to draw, which for me is always interesting. So you don't only learn to draw and how to color, but you also learn some biology on the way. When I make my shadows on the bone, I got used, similar with making shadow for a skin, to use a light, dirty blue wash over it as well, because it gives the whole bone a much more natural feeling, I think. I like it more. Like if you also make shadow parts on the skin, you usually add a little bit of blue. I think this makes shadows even more realistic or deeper. I mean, bones aren't actually blue, and skin isn't actually blue, but somehow that's part of color theory, I think. It's difficult. You can see that it's difficult to explain stuff while drawing. That's usually why I make, or even other YouTube artists make time-lapse videos, because it's simply easier to do something and afterwards make a voiceover and explain what you've actually done, take your time, maybe make a script if you want to address a certain topic. But with these draw with me videos, I kind of prefer to keep a looser style. Just talk to you about stuff that pops into my head. So these are the most direct videos I feel I can do for you. And like I said, it's always good to see how slow an art making progress really is. Because what you see me currently doing here, I'm going to continue and deepen and deepen and deepen and layer and layer and layer until I am satisfied with what I have. I don't really have a clear system on how long I'm on the beige color, how long I'm on the ochre color. I'm continuously switching back and forth, and then when I decide a shadow needs to be deeper, I make it deeper, and so on until I'm just satisfied with what I've done. Also, watercolor is a paint that works like multiplying in Photoshop. So if you have a layer down and you put another layer over it with the same color, it will deepen the color because you put another soft layer of pigments onto it, and so on and so forth. And you can simply continue that until it's as dark as you want it to be. Of course, you can always make your colors that you work with darker. Well, in watercolor you have the water and you have the color you put into it, so you water them down, and you can always put more pigment into your mix to make it deeper, more saturated, and so on and so forth. So it's really up to you how you like to work in watercolor. I prefer to have really slow and soft layers, bit by bit, until I am there where I want to be. And if you make a mistake with watercolor, when you put your color down and it's still really wet, you can just take a napkin or and push it softly down on it and pick up the pigments again, or take a dry brush or mostly dry brush and brush over it and pick the pigment up that way. So here I am at the point where I would wait for a few minutes to let it dry. I think I'm also going to stop the recording here. My main question in this video was watercolor. Do you consider it painting or drawing? In my case, I consider it drawing, although it is done with a brush. But that's my personal approach to this subject. So I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching this slow drawing video. I got a little bit inspired, maybe a little bit of information that was useful for you. And as promised, I'm going to add the finished drawing now. I don't know if I'm going to succeed or if I'm going to fail, but I'm going to add it anyway if I succeeded or failed. Sometimes stuff happens and you ruin your painting. So in any case, here's the finished drawing. See you next time. Bye.